You're now enrolled in the School of BlackNegroJitsu. Is it your first day? Don't worry, the master, Leroy Stephen, and his co-instructors Dave, Mike, and Kyle will take it easy on you, rookie. Enroll in the School of BlackNegroJitsu right now. It's free. All you have to do. There's no hidden costs, no hidden fees. Hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're on. iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play. Hit subscribe, get enrolled, and you'll get completely free access to all of our classes. That's the School of BlackNegroJitsu. That's our main mixed martial arts class. Then we also have our two fantasy classes, the MMA Edge Fantasy Podcast and Black Market Picks. And we also have other offerings at the school, interviews, other random things. Enroll now. It's free, guys. Welcome one, welcome all to the School of BlackNegroJitsu, guys. I'm your host, the master of BlackNegroJitsu, Leroy Stephen. I'm going it solo dolo today. Got a couple of interviews to get out of the way. Julian, Juicy J, Erosa, Ryan James. We're going to get those out of the way. I also have a rundown of UFC 219. We're going to discuss all the latest news that's running around. Mackenzie Dern making her debut. Conor McGregor, who's he going to face? Will he be coming back? And Rizin, the Rizin card that just went down over the past weekend. You know, I'm only going to discuss a little bit of that because I still got to finish watching the event. I really enjoyed watching the Rizin event. But yeah, man, we've got a full slate for you guys. Happy to be back. I know it's been a while since I've done a School of BlackNegroJitsu podcast. I've been doing all the rest of the episodes here, but we had the Daily Fantasy MMA Awards. We've been having fantasy cards all week, and I just haven't been able to get a hold of my co-host lately. We had the holiday season, but we're back in business. We're back ready to roll. We've got lots of great things for you in the future. Josh Emmett is going to be coming up. I'm going to have a great interview with Vaughn Alexander. That's the brother of Devon Alexander, WBC, WBO, something weight champion. Vaughn Alexander is on his way to a world title at this time. He's got an awesome story. We're gonna be talking to him, and hopefully I will finally have John Crouch on the show and a whole host of other guys. Man, yeah, we've got a lot on tap for the School of BlackNegroJitsu this year. But let's go ahead and get into the UFC 219 card here. We had an awesome card at UFC 219, and I really enjoyed it, man. I guess it wasn't the best card of the year, but I thought it was quality. I thought that there were a lot of great fights. I thought the main event was great. Let's get right into the rundown though. Tim Elliott versus Mark De La Rosa. Tim Elliott schooled Mark De La Rosa. I think we were all expecting that. Mark De La Rosa is coming in on short notice. He's a young fighter. I mean, what could he possibly expect? He held his own as best as he could, but oh man, Tim Elliott is so much more experienced, has been in the game so much longer, and is so much better on the mat. Ended that early or late. What's it, late in round two? Early in round two, a 149. Next up, Matheus Nicolau put a spanking on Luis Smoker. I was hoping that Luis Smoker would come back and be revitalized, but he couldn't get it to the ground, couldn't get into his strength. When it did go to ground, it went on Nicolau's terms, so Nicolau was able to really get a one-sided beating on Smoker there. Amari Akhmedov and Marvin Vettori, two gas cans here. They had a very exciting but also in a way pitiful fight, as both of them gassed out, I guess, after the first round, and we were left with two huffing, puffing men fighting in spurts. It was kind of sad looking at times, but yeah, nobody really wanted this one bad enough. Marvin Vettori and Amari Akhmedov both need to go to the park and get that cardio up, because if either of them would have been in the right shape, they would have been Marvin Vettori especially. He should have known Akhmedov is a fade
machine. That's what he does, is he fades late in the fight. But still, I'm glad my boy Marvin Vettori didn't take the L. I'm a big fan of his. Akhmedov is he's improving, but he is what he's always been, and that's a guy that's just not there in that late in that second round or early in that third round. He's going to be gone. Miles, the Fury jury, put a schooling on Rick Glenn. That's how I thought it would be. A lot of people thought Rick Glenn would be able to come in here and pull off the upset, but Miles Jury is the way better athlete, and he's also more skilled in every area than Rick Glenn. He's the better striker. He's the better grappler. I mean, Rick Glenn is, and especially speaking in fantasy terms, he's good in certain spots, but this was not the spot, man. He was completely outclassed here against Miles Jury. No shame in that. Rick Glenn will be back. He's a great fighter. He's got a lot of heart. He's got a lot of skill. I'll be excited to see him in the future. Who I was disappointed in though, Khalil Roundtree, man. Technically, from a striking perspective, I think he's superior to Mikhail Alexijuk, but man, his fight IQ, he threw that out the window. He looked good. He's all cut up and muscular and ready to rock, and he's been looking great in his last couple of fights. Been finishing in super impressive fashion, and with how hurtable Alexijuk was, I thought this was going to be an easy going for Roundtree, because I don't think Alexijuk was as good as Paul Craig. I don't think he's as good as Daniel Jolly. I don't think he's as good as Andrew Sanchez, Tyson Pedro, or almost anybody that Roundtree has stepped into the octagon with this year, to be honest. Or not this year, but within his career, let's say. And Roundtree just gassed himself out. That pretty much was the story of the fight. Taking nothing away from Alexijuk, he looked much improved in a certain way. He was not as hurtable as he was. His boxing looked better, and he was able to do what it takes to beat Khalil Roundtree, which is weather the storm, continue being consistent, and get those takedowns to seal the fight up. So congratulations to Alexijuk. Khalil Roundtree needs to go back to the drawing board. But yeah, man, I was real disappointed in Khalil Roundtree and his showing there. Neil Magny versus Carlos, the natural born killer Condit. Oh man, this is the biggest win of Neil Magny's career. I am super proud of him. Saw him at the gym, Watson Martial Arts, that I trained at a couple weeks ago. Took a picture with him. He looked. This is the proudest moment of his career, man. That's a huge win. Carlos Condit is super tough. I thought he beat Robbie Lawler in that last title fight. Yeah, man. Neil Magny looked great. He did everything right. He did everything he needed to do. He wasn't even really that outclassed on the feet. Carlos Condit is a beast on the feet. He's got nasty elbows. He can hurt you at any moment, and he's a finisher. Neil Magny should be proud of himself. He definitely jumped over a big hurdle in his career. Oftentimes when I think of Neil Magny, I say he's a great fighter, but when he gets up there, when he climbs that mountain, up in that top 10 and whatnot, that's when the party stops. Not tonight. Neil Magny looked awesome, fought a great fight, and I was super impressed by Neil Magny, man. Biggest win of his career. Carlos Condit, I wouldn't say, I didn't think he looked bad. Neil Magny did everything right, did everything he needed to do, and fought the perfect fight. So I think Carlos Condit still has a lot left. He looked like Carlos Condit. Carlos Condit will let him, he doesn't have the best takedown defense. He can be out wrestled. And, but man, usually you don't see people out, just kind of overwhelm Condit like that. He usually adjusts and is able to get in there and start to do work. So, yeah, man, super impressive by Neil Magny. Next up, we had the OG, Carla Esparza versus Cynthia Calvillo, the YG. Basically, Carla Esparza is Cynthia Calvillo, and Cynthia Calvillo is Carla Esparza. The young Mexican grappler versus the old Mexican grappler, and The old Mexican grappler won out here. I think Cynthia Calvillo has a lot to learn from Carla Esparza, as the reason why Calvillo lost is because she does not go to her strength enough. In the first round, she took Esparza down. She dominated the fight. Past that though, she didn't get back to what she does the best, and that cost her. Carla Esparza takes the fight down. She is what she is, and she's consistently that in every fight. Cynthia Calvillo, she's an electric grappler, but she forgets what her bread and butter is oftentimes, man. And she got in here against the OG, and the YG failed, man. So OG Carla Esparza, I'm super happy for Carla Esparza. She needed that win. That's a super impressive and super that's an awesome thing to hang her hat on. It says that she still got it, man. Calvillo is a tough out for anybody. She's trying to go on a tear and murder the veterans, and Calvillo wasn't able to get it done here. Although the decision maybe is questionable. I thought that maybe there's an argument for Calvillo winning. It's super close. I don't think there were any losers in the fight. Calvillo just has to be more assertive with that grappling. Mark Diakiese versus Daniel Hooker, the Hangman. Diakiese, man, he's still young. That's all it is. He's got awesome potential. He's 12-2, guys. A lot of people talking about he sucks. He's a bum. He's lost to Jaquar Close and Daniel Hooker, back-to-back fights. Other than that, he looked very impressive, but against tough veteran fighters. And that fight against the Jaquar Close was a split decision. He was subbed out here, but Diakiese, he's still figuring it out. He's still putting his game together. This is a tough level of competition. And Daniel Hooker is not the guy that you want to shoot sloppy shots on, man. You gotta cross your T's and dot your I's against the Hangman. Mark Diakiese got sloppy and he got finished. So the Hangman hung Mark Diakiese. Mark Diakiese will be back. He's a super impressive athlete. He just has to kind of improve his game, just tighten it up. Figure out what he wants to be and what he wants to do, and do more jabs, score more points. He's got the flash down, but the substance is lacking from Mark Diakiese. He'll be back. He trains out of a great team. He'll figure it out. He's still young in his career. He just needs a few more softer matchups, and he'll be just fine. Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov versus Edson Barboza. Man, what a smashing. What I was most impressed by, the Eagle's grappling was much better, man. His grappling he really cleaned that up. I like that. Edson Barboza did as good as he could do, I think. He didn't look bad at all. It's just Khabib's wrestling is so good and powerful that Edson looked well prepared for the fight, man. He fought Khabib off for the first couple minutes and was defending takedowns well. It's just like Khabib's and that's what a great takedown artist does. I remember playing football. You can't always get the tackle the first way. You just keep chaining them together. And Khabib never seems to run out of ways when he gets a hold of you to get the fight to the ground. If the double leg doesn't work, he goes for a high crotch. If high crotch doesn't work, he goes for trips. And he ties it all together seamlessly. Khabib's striking looked much better. That was what I was most impressed by. I think I already mentioned that. He was not nearly as sloppy as he had been in the past. He was pressuring, but he wasn't irresponsible. I thought he got a little too confident in his striking there, and he almost got plastered with a kick. But Khabib looked awesome, man. And Tony Ferguson, with how Kevin Lee was putting Khabib on his back, I don't know how Tony Ferguson would fare. And man, Conor McGregor, Khabib he's a boss, man. Conor McGregor would be in trouble, but I don't know how clean Khabib's striking is yet, and that's something that Conor McGregor, all he would have to do is prepare for one thing, and that's Khabib's wrestling. And I think a consummate champion like McGregor could get it done. He's not, when all you have to do is go in and focus on one thing. Conor McGregor has the striking down. He is very creative and electric with that. I think he could do it, but that is an intriguing matchup. Kevin Lee, I'd like to see Kevin Lee versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, honestly. I think Kevin Lee, maybe in a couple years, Kevin Lee beats Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think that could happen. Kevin Lee has the grappling acumen to take a fight like that. So I wanted we saw it. People say that Khabib has never lost a round. That's not true. I thought he lost a fight. I thought he lost the fight against Gleison Tibau. I thought it was pretty clear. Gleison Tibau won that fight. He definitely lost a round during that fight. The answer to Khabib is a wrestler, strong wrestler with good striking, because that's what he doesn't do so well. He's not any sort of great striker, but he could not dictate. He couldn't get the fight to the ground when he won it against Gleison, and Gleison was the better striker at the time. I mean, we looked through Khabib's his record here in the UFC: Kamal Shalorus, Thiago Tavares, Abel Killer Trujillo, Pat Healy, Rafael Dos Anjos. That was an impressive win, definitely. But I think that was boss Rafael Dos Anjos, Daryl Horcher, Michael Johnson. None of these guys are great wrestlers except for, we said, well, Abel Trujillo is okay. But, I mean, but Khabib, the thing with him is fighting a wrestler, getting in there against a good, strong wrestler. I know Frankie Edgar is a weight class smaller, but that would be interesting. I don't know, who are the strong grapplers at 155? Lee, Ferguson. Oh, you had Gleison Tibau back in the day. I don't know, but that's what I want to see. I want to see Khabib versus wrestlers, because I think that's where his tests lie. On to the main event. I thought the main event was great. Holly Holm versus Chris Cyborg. I was shocked by how strong Holly Holm was. She continuously won the grappling portions of the fight, but did not finish and go for takedowns, which was disappointing to me, because that she could have possibly won those rounds, or if she would have been active on the cage with strikes and knees and landed offense, she could have possibly made an argument for winning those rounds, as they were very, very close, So I definitely like to see, I was definitely impressed by the strength of Holly Holm. I always thought she was strong like a man. When she's picked Ronda Rousey up and slammed her, now she hemmed Cyborg up. But the problem is that, she continuously goes into fights, and this was the thing. This was a close fight, but who was landing the harder strikes, and who was that? It was obvious that Chris Cyborg, when she would land, her strikes were much more powerful and impactful than anything Holly Holm was landing. And that was pretty much the story of the fight. All fight is that, yes, Holly Holm would land, but Cyborg would land, and she would do big damage too, man. I mean, Cyborg's a big old girl. I think that's what it is. She's a real true 100. She's about 170 pounds walking around, or 180 pounds plus. She's something out of control, and it kind of showed with how Holly Holmes. I've never seen anybody even Jermaine Durandamy wasn't doing damage to Holly Holm like that. And that's where we have the conversation about USADA. Like, how much did Chris Cyborg steroid use in the past? How much of an effect does that have on her power? Because for a 145 person, that's pretty ridiculous, especially a 145 pound woman. Now, I'm a big Chris Cyborg fan, but I kind of see why people Jermaine Durandamy, I think her hand actually was the reason why she didn't fight Cyborg. I don't think she's afraid to fight Cyborg because she fought a man, but I guess she did vacate her title, but look at the damage that Holly Holm took in that fight, man. That was brutal. Her eye was swollen shut. And you have to say, Like, how much of that power comes from the years of steroid use, you know? And I can't blame for Duran to me for not wanting to fight her, because do you want your face to look like that after a fight? It almost doesn't make sense for a woman to have that much power. Now, I love Chris Cyborg. I think she's a sweetheart. She's a Christian woman. I love that. You know, I'm a big Cyborg fan. But looking at the damage to Holmes' face and the fact that it was the power in the strikes that was the difference, and not and Cyborg was a bit more technically efficient. I'll say that too. Got to give her big props for out technically, and Jason Perillo too. She technically outdid Holly Holm. Very, very impressive. If you told me the fight stays on the feet the whole time and there's no knockout and there's no takedowns, I say Holly Holm all day. Chris Cyborg out technical Holly Holm and landed more too. So very impressive all around by Cyborg. But looking at Holly Holm's face, man, wow. I think it's just mainly because I heard C.T. Fletcher talk about steroid use. Once you stop using, you lose all the gains and maybe even a little bit more. But for a woman, I heard Joe Rogan talking about it just totally changes your physical makeup, man. And man, to have that kind of power. Well, you know what? I don't even know if her power is even that pronounced, but just to look at Holly Holm's face, it was a bit, you wonder where is that power coming from? It's probably just coming from the fact that she's probably not even a true 145 pounder. She probably belongs at 155 pounds, 165 pounds, something like that, but that kind of stuff does not exist. But taking nothing away from Cyborg, guys, just being a conversationalist there. Great card, awesome card. I would like to see Holly Holm versus Cyborg in a rematch. What Holly Holm has to do, here's the key for Holly Holm: start wrestling. She is strong like a man. She has manhandled everybody she's ever gotten a hold of. She does things that make you wonder, like, wow, man, how strong is this girl? Like when Miesha Tate was on top of her and she crawled all the way across the cage with Miesha Tate on top. That's not easy to do, but Holly Holm is extraordinarily strong. She needs to start using wrestling. Like she gets in on what would be good takedowns, but she doesn't finish. She knows what to do, but she's not being a complete fighter. And it's hard to win mixed martial arts fights when you only do one thing, especially when you're going up against people that are specialists in the same area that you're a specialist. When you're going up against other striking specialists, the difference should be the takedown and the grappling. Get that takedown and land significant strikes from on top, and do damage, or land some significant strikes in the clinch, which she did not do. She does one thing: she strikes at range. If she gets a hold of you, she won't land strikes. Like Holly Holm needs to do more than one thing. She's got to start landing. She had ample opportunities to rough Cyborg up against the cage. She did not. She could have scored a lot of points with that because she controlled the fight in the clinch when it was there. Holly Holm has to do more than one thing. I think she can win a rematch, but she has to be more than just a range striker. That just is not a formula for a mixed martial arts champion. Please go for doubles, takedowns. She's got the strength. She doesn't have to do jiu-jitsu. Take her down, boom, bam, boom, 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 land about 10 significant strikes, go back to the feet. You know what I'm saying? That's all you got to do. But anyway, awesome card. I just wanted to make a statement about that. Let me get into this. I got a couple interviews stored up here. We're going to do the Ryan James interview first. Ryan James was in an absolute war with Andrew El Dirte Sanchez a couple of weeks ago, and I got to talk to him candidly about his career and about the fight and everything. How does he take so much punishment and just keep going? So I hope you guys enjoy this interview, and yeah, we'll be back after that with some more news, and also the Julian Juicy J Erosa interview. Enjoy this Ryan James interview, though. Ryan James, welcome to the School of BlackNegroJitsu. It is excellent to have you on today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Usually I want to talk about people's careers, how they got into martial arts and all that kind of shit, but damn that today. I want to talk about Ryan James' latest fights against Andrew Sanchez and a couple ones earlier as well. But you have that was absolutely, arguably, the comeback performance. He's got hard performance of the year in there against Andrew Sanchez. You took one of the worst beatings. As a matter of fact, you were getting beat up so bad in the first round. I was like, man, the ref, he's going to catch a lot of flack for not stopping this fight. How did you feel in there, man? I mean, were you okay? I mean, were you dizzy? Were you how hurt were you in that first round against Andrew Sanchez?
Yeah. First things first, the ref did a great job. He did exactly what he told me he was going to do in the back, in the room. So as much slack as he might get, he did a good job. So I'd like to make that clear. And the second thing, that first punch that dropped me, I just thought he took me down. So when I was like falling, I guess I was like, it connected and I was falling. And then before I hit the ground, I was back and I was like, well, I got to stand up. So I started to stand up right away. So I just thought it was a takedown. And I was like, well, now I got to defend this. And I had to get up. And I know he was kind of feeding me some punches. And the ref was like, okay, change positions. I was like, well, I got to hurry up and change positions or he's going to stop the fight.
So you didn't even realize what happened.
Yeah.
God, then I think you got knocked down a couple more times. Were you cognizant of those during the fight?
Yeah. So the second knockdown that he hit me with was when he had my foot. So he kind of hit me and I fell back. Like that one really didn't connect. And the rest of them weren't so didn't really connect solid. But like that first one, 100% connected very well.
So you don't even think that he was doing a lot of damage. It was just more of it looked worse than it was during the fight. Cause I was watching it like, man, this is disgusting. I can't even believe they're letting this go on. And then you kept on and you just got up like it's nothing. And I saw the same thing in the Jack Marshman fight. Like, do you just have a propensity for taking punches?
Yeah, it's a bit of it's kind of freaky, I guess. Like my coach is like, it is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I always have a really rough first round. And then I just kind of, after being punched, I just kind of kick in and go into gear. So, yeah. I mean, to be fair, the Marshman fight, I actually didn't feel like I got hit too bad in that fight. I got hit, but you know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like the guy connected. But like the hardest punch I got connected with before my UFC career was one of my last fights in the local show. A guy clipped me and it was hard, and that was like way harder than what Marshman hit me with. After that fight, I was like, I'm fine. Like I don't even have a bruise on my face. Like I'm good. So yeah, I'm just it's just
you
freaky.
are the Canadian zombie, sir. What is Chan? You're gonna keep going in Chan Sung Jung. People are gonna forget all about his durability. Now, did you get a bonus for that fight? Did you get fight of the night or performance of the night? Let me see here.
No, I didn't get a bonus for that fight. No,
nothing. Wow,
nothing. Yeah.
Oh man, that's one of the best comebacks I've ever seen.
So I've been told. I mean, if I made the decision, I would totally get it. But I mean, I'm not the one who makes those decisions, so that's kind of what it is.
You fucked up my night on DraftKings, sir, because I didn't have. Yeah, man. If you wouldn't have came back and won that fight in such convincing fashion, I would have won the entire tournament that night. But thanks to Ryan James, no big money for me.
I know.
That's all good. Because I had.
I don't feel bad.
I had different underdogs, but let's get into your martial arts background. You're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How long have you been doing? How did you get into the martial arts, and then how long have you been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for?
Well, I started martial arts. I think it's more correct. I started athletic anything about 12 years ago. Like up until I started at Zuma Martial Arts, I pretty much was like a computer geek. Like I just pretty much stayed home, played video games. I didn't really exercise or do anything. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting out of shape. And I started in. I like called Zuma, and I ended up going, and I started in, and then yeah. So 12 years ago, I started everything, and then from there, maybe because gi jiu-jitsu, I mean, no gi was at Zuma much at Zuma, but gi jiu-jitsu didn't come till a couple years later. So I've been probably doing gi jiu-jitsu for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's literally it for my martial arts background. Just started at Zuma Martial Arts, and then that was about 12 years ago, and that was it.
Now,
I never did nothing as a kid. Never really. Actually, I did judo as a young kid when I was, how old was I? Maybe 5 or 6 years old. And but it was like across town and too late for my mom, who was single parent, so she couldn't take us out there anymore. So I did judo for a couple months when I was a young kid. And that's it.
Now, did you ever win any international tournaments for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or how have you have you won any notable tournaments in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Like how many accolades have you been able to acquire in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, not like a ton, because so I'm from Vancouver Island. Victoria is the city, so it's just like a small island off the coast of British Columbia. So I'm close to Vancouver. I'm not insanely too far from Seattle, but when I started jiu-jitsu, there was like basically small local tournaments in Vancouver, and I would go and generally do well there. Like I either get gold or silver. But when I started fighting and I stopped competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like tournaments really only started to really pop up, like big ones like IBJJF recently. So I haven't really been able to compete at a high level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, I want to, and it's a goal of mine at some point, but I mean, I am not willing to risk getting hurt at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition for to replace my fighting to where I get paid.
Mm-hmm. Now, where are you training at? Are you still living on Vancouver Island? You told me you went down to Rufus for your last camp before we started this call. So obviously Rufus Sport. How much of your training camp do you spend down there? Was it a couple weeks? Was it the whole thing?
Generally for up until recently, it was always Vancouver Island. Like I always did my training at Zuma Martial Arts with Adam Zuchek and Sarah Kaufman. She's a fighter who's fighting Invicta coming up. But for this fight, we were fighting a wrestler and a really good guy. Adam, my coach Adam, was like, we should kind of do something different. And I went down to train with Duke at Rufus Sport for 5 weeks of my camp. So 5 weeks, I went back to Vancouver Island for basically the week in between. Then I went down to Vegas for the fight.
So how many weeks was that all in? So is Vancouver
five. So I did 5 weeks down at Rufus Sports.
Okay, 5
so
weeks.
I did my majority of my camp down there for sure.
And they have like dorms and stuff down there?
No, I had to Airbnb it.
Airbnb. What? So you sleeping on somebody's floor, I'm assuming?
But pretty well, not that bad, but pretty much.
Okay.
I rented a room in some dude's house that was like close to the gym. It actually was quite perfect because they left me alone, but that was pretty much what I had going on.
Okay, so do you have a wife and a kids or anything like that?
Yeah, I pretty much have a wife, and she's pregnant and due in March, so I will have a kid.
Okay, so do you think that as you continue with your career, you will continue to do the Rufus Sport 5 week type deal, or do you want to stay home or closer to your family for the next couple camps or whatever? How you think you're going to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think for now, I would like to still go away. I probably couldn't go away for like 5 weeks. I'd have to go back and forth to smaller chunks, but I would still like that. I mean, I got a lot from Duke and Scott Cushman and them at Rufus Sport. Like they helped me so much for this fight, and the atmosphere and the people down there are amazing. So it's I think I'll probably go back down there. I mean, I also like my coach Adam Zuzek is incredible as well. So I mean, I think I'll just probably do more splitting my time between both camps.
And like, what kind of training partners were you going with down there, Rufus Sport? What kind of resources were you working down there? Since you said you wanted to go there to prepare for the wrestler, who exactly was or were you preparing with?
Mostly for the wrestling portion and stuff. It was mostly Mike Rhodes. He helped me a lot with all that, and like Gerald, who found the same card as me.
Who you fought the last fight?
Yeah, exactly. So he was one of my main training partners for this fight. And Cam Olsen, who fought locally, I think he was on the Contender Series as well. He helped me a lot for this fight, so it was really good. And then like their jiu-jitsu guy Daniel Wanderlei kind of got a very good like jiu-jitsu wrestling mind, so it was great. They all really helped me so much.
Okay, awesome. Now I got a question for you. You were pretty controlling of the grappling in that Gerald Miesha fight. How did you get submitted with that armbar? You don't see black belts get submitted with armbars from guard too often. At least that's what I was hearing Eddie Bravo say. It's kind of a rarity. What happened there? What happened there? I heard Eddie Bravo say, and I thought that looked weird, really weird. But what happened there that you got submitted there?
Gerald is a slick motherfucker, man. Like after training with him too, I mean, it's just, and I think the hardest thing about that fight was that we knew he was slick like that, so we knew there was a good chance that I'd have control moments, and it was just, I don't know, just a moment of I left my arm in the wrong spot. I defended the triangle well, and then I didn't tuck my elbow. And Gerald is fast with those hips, and he hit the armbar.
Okay, all right, yeah. I thought that looked really weird. You weren't wearing a gi. He didn't have any grips, and then
he's so fast with those transitions that it was just, his quickness and my mistake, and he did it so good. It's fast, and it's hard for me too, because I after training with the guy too, I like him a lot, and I don't accidentally talk shit,
Mm-hmm.
But it was just good timing on his part.
Do you what's on the horizon for you? Do you have any fights that you're targeting? Like what would you like to who would you like to fight next?
Oh man, see, you caught me Christmas. Normally I try to have an answer for this stuff, but you caught me at Christmas, so I'm all preparing for holidays / not thinking about fighting / thinking about my baby being born. So I haven't really.
When's your baby due?
But March 26th.
Oh, okay. So do you not want to fight up until then? Do you want to kind of wait till?
I'll probably, because I can't really go on to camp with her being so pregnant right now, so I can't really go away right now. But I don't think I'll be fighting until after March. But yeah, I mean, you send me a message in a month, and I'll definitely have an answer for you. I mean, ultimately, I would take a fight if they were like, "Hey, would you fight Michael Bisping for his retirement fight?" And I'd be like, "Yes." But that's because that's huge, right? And he's awesome, and he's the man, and that'd be it would be an honor to be able to do that. But I mean, unless it's a ginormous fight like that, I just got to worry about my family. It's their deal.
Yeah. It's a good time to be free. A lot of fighters are cutting weight and missing Christmas dinner. I don't think I could be with that shit myself. Do you work? So you don't?
That'd be the worst.
You don't work a full-time job, do you? Or do you just?
Yes,
train?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your profession there?
Well, I mean, it's the easiest way to describe it. I do web development for provincial government.
You work for the government, Canadian government?
Yes, exactly. Well, it's like the state government almost, so the provincial government here.
So Vancouver is in which province?
British Columbia.
So you work for the province of British Columbia. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So is that so it's pretty, is it flexible? Like, how does that work? Part-time, full-time? How do you work around that? Do you ever want to be a full-time fighter?
I think you've talked to enough fighters to know that we probably don't make that much money to be able to give up our day jobs. And I'm also pretty old for a fighter. I'm 36 years old, so it's hard to give up my full-time job, and it's full-time. I mean, if I have to go away for training camp, I'll either take a leave of absence or use my vacation time. Like, it's all on my own time. But they're pretty comfortable with giving me that time and whatnot. They're pretty supportive.
Oh, all right. I didn't know if you were working full time or not since you were leaving for camp.
Yeah. So for when I'm training at home, my training times are after work. So I basically work 9 to 5, and then I train like 5 to whenever. But when I went down to camp, it was a little different. So I had to take I think I took vacation time to do it this time.
So how often do you run during your camps? Do you just spar your way into shape? Like, how do you handle that? I know a lot of probably Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, they probably spar their way into shape. I know I was talking to, Craig Jones from Eddie Bravo's Invitational and all that kind of shit like that.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, he almost won the EBI this time around against Gordon Ryan, but he was telling me he doesn't run to prepare for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But how do you handle that? Are you a runner, or how do you get in shape for fights?
Yeah, it's like for my cardio, I add running for my fight camp for sure. Like, I'll do a couple times in the morning because that kind of helps with my weight.
Is it every day though?
No, it's not every day. Like, so 2 or 3 times a week, I'll do running in the morning, and then 2 days a week, I'll do sprinting after my training. So, like, I'll do sparring, I'll do pads and sparring, and then I'll go for a sprint afterwards. And then that kind of what helps me get in shape. And then, like, I'll randomly do stairs every now and again to really kind of get my heart pumping in a different way. But generally, that's kind of all I do.
Yeah, you obviously don't have any problems with conditioning or anything else concerning your body. You seem to never get hurt or never get tired. Are you worried about your overall health in the long run with this type of style, or would you like to improve your defensive proficiency? Because you just been walking through punches like, fuck, it doesn't even. I'm watching the fight, and honestly, I say, well, Ryan James, he didn't move his head as well as he should. I'm like, I guess he'll get clipped and knocked out, and then you just continue to get hit and continue to get hit and walk forward and continue to land, and it's like, wow. This is unbelievable. Like, do you play? Like, your striking is improving, but do you want to improve your striking proficiency even more, or would you just like to continue to be the fucking Terminator? What are you gonna do?
I would like to improve my defense more. Of course, I would. No one needs to start taking those punches. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you got to kind of consider your health too.
But man, is it entertaining though?
Well, that's the worst thing too. It's just like, I know I'm an entertaining fighter, but it's just like, it's not good for me. Like, I don't want to be the guy who, like, I don't want my chin to go and then I get touched and I'm done. Like, there's a few fighters in the UFC right now that are like that, and I don't want to be that guy. So personally, I would 100% like to, in the moment, have better, like, striking defense. 100%. Anyone who goes, no, I just want to walk through and have exciting fights is ridiculous.
When did you even start striking? Being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, it must have been just a couple years ago, right?
No. So, I mean, I've been doing my kickboxing right from the get-go, like, along with my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been doing all of it the whole time. It's just, most people come in from some sort of athletic background or something. I didn't. So I basically didn't know how to really move my body until I started martial arts, So and I was 25 when I started. So the mental bad habits, sometimes, like in sparring, I don't get clipped that much. Like, I don't get hit that much. I move my head more, I blocked it better. Just in the fight, in that moment, I don't know, shut off and be like, okay, Terminator, you're dead. I'm just going to come at you and do what I do. So it's hard to It's one of those things where I gotta make sure.
So basically,
I'm even better in training, so it transitions to fighting.
So basically, you're still kind of an immature striker, and that when you get hit, you start to get anxious and say, "Fuck it, I'm just going after it," huh? That happens to some people. That happens to that happens to boxers that've been boxing their whole life. They get hit and they start brawling.
I never thought about that. I don't necessarily mean to brawl. It's just
a reaction.
I don't worry about the defense as much,
Yeah, it's just a reaction that you kind of have to try and train out of yourself, I assume.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's everybody responds to being hit. Like if you hit a regular person in the street, everybody would take it different. Some people would just come after you. Some people might ask you why you did it. You're one of those guys that gets hit and just starts brawling. You're not like, man, why'd you hit me? It's just your nature. You just have to try and deal with that.
I just turn it on. Exactly.
And be more proficient. It's the savagery in you. That's all it is.
Well,
it's good.
Yeah, like at first it was more like, okay, he hit you, don't get angry. So I'm kind of over that now. So now it's like be more mindful after you get hit, think about it.
Yeah, that's all it is. And I mean, that's a good response to have. That means you got good fight in you and everything like that, but it's not necessarily intelligent because then you start walking into counters and shit like that on the higher levels of things. But
you get a high level striker and I'm just kind of pushing forward. It only gets you so far, and then at some point you're just going to get really chin checked and in real trouble, and that I don't want that to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, as time, you just gotta kind of do some meditation about it and some stuff like that, and it should improve. Now, do you have any super interesting stories from your career? Any revelations? We've had a few revelations on the show. Otherwise, I'm gonna leave you alone for today.
What do you mean by revelations?
I don't know. Any groundbreaking news, any rumors, anything like that?
Oh, no, sorry. No, nothing. Unfortunately,
Was anybody snorting coke or doing drugs at Rufus Sport? Would you like to snitch on them because you don't like them?
Oh, my God, no. Everyone you're talking to, like, I've had such a positive experience when it comes to martial arts and fighting. Like, I've never had... Like, I haven't really had one bad experience. Everyone's been so awesome to me. Like, it gets dull almost. I mean, like, just to hear me talk, be like, okay, just tell me some shit, but I don't have any. Everyone's just so good. Like, even when I went to the UFC retreat, like, anybody I ran into was awesome.
Did you see Cyborg punch Magana?
I literally just missed it. Like, we were coming back from the Performance Institute, and we heard about it. We're like, damn it. We just missed it. What I said was like, I wouldn't want to get hit by Cyborg. And then Stefan Strove was he turned around in front of me. He turned around and was like, I wouldn't want to get hit by her either. Like that.
I don't know if Cyborg really hits that hard though, man. She's been struggling to finish girls. Maybe that's because of her weight cut too, though, man.
Who knows?
I guess that's a different conversation for a different day. But I was kind of unimpressed with her victories over Lena Landsberg and Tanya Evinger, two soccer moms, essentially. I was not impressed with that. I know Tanya Evinger is a top level grappler. Lena Landsberg has some good Muay Thai, but if you're really as dangerous as they say you are, you're supposed to put girls away like that in the first round,
But do you think she's trying to be too she's trying to show people that she's trying to be too technical rather than just being that savage that she is?
Well, I think that only works when you have significant athletic advantages over your opponent, which she won't have over Holly Holm. Holly Holm is just as big as strong as her. But when Lena Landsberg or anybody uses any type of movement and makes her use footwork, she's not. I don't think she's that technical of a Muay Thai striker. I think she's a great. I think she's definitely good at it, but it's more Muay Thai based, which means if you use the boxing and the footwork and, use the angles, Muay Thai, you just stand in front of each other and whip ass, but when you start using the movement, cutting angles, she kind of struggles. The best part of her game to me, the way she wins against Holly Holm to me is with the grappling.
Oh yeah.
Her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is pretty high level. And if you're a betting man, she's a plus 1,000 to win by submission. I think that's the only way she wins is on the ground, either by a KO TKO. Well, I don't see the KO TKO, so by submission. So if you're a betting man, Ryan James,
I am not. I lose constantly. I'd be the worst. Like, bet on the people opposite that I would probably bet on.
I'm not a bet man either, but I thought that's a ridiculous line. Is I think that's her best way to win. But oh man, you have you thought about participating in any EBIs or any combat jiu-jitsu tournaments, man? Has that sparked your interest? Maybe.
I've just been focusing so much on fighting. I would definitely love to do it. I love grappling. It is like jiu-jitsu is my passion. Like, I absolutely love it. When I'm done this UFC business, I will always have grappling, my jiu-jitsu. That's when I will really start competing in it. And yeah, like, of course I would love to do something like that. That'd be super amazing.
That is awesome, Ryan James.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your contribution to the School of Black Negro Jiu-Jitsu. I want you to stay on the line. As a matter of fact, I want to get your fight picks for UFC 219. Feature them on my fantasy podcast. So, but thank you for your contribution to the School of Black Negro Jiu-Jitsu. If you have any shout outs, any sponsors, go ahead and do that now.
I would just like to thank Zuma Martial Arts and Zuchek and Sarah Kaufman. And I'd like to thank Rufus Sport, Duke Rufus and Scott Cushman and Danny Wandelay. The two places I did training, those places were awesome and made me feel like home and allowed me to really succeed in my last fight.
Hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Ryan James. Man, he's a tough mofo. Really enjoying him fight in a bit of a degenerate type of way because he takes so much punishment and just keeps going forward. I love to see Ryan James's head kind of bounce around there. But let's talk a little bit about this Rizin Fighting Championships that happened over the weekend, or the first part of the tournament. I guess next show I'll talk about the whole thing. But, well, I'll just talk about what because there were 2 rounds, I guess. So we had the Rizin Fighting World Grand Prix 2017 second round. That was on Friday, December 29th. And then we had the final round on the 31st. But I really love the presentation. I really love the lead-in videos. I really love the emotion of the announcers. There's so much to love about Rizin Fighting Championships. Really keys off the Pride events of old. They have great entrances. We get to see all the personalities of the fighters really shine through. And the fights are way better because over in Japan, it's not so much about, winning as it is the spirit, heart, desire, and effort of the fighter. That's what gets you fans over in Japan. It's not like that in America. It's all about the win or the loss, not about your real effort. But I was very disappointed that Gabi Garcia versus Shinobu Kandori did not happen. I know I'm a degenerate. I wanted to see the fight. And I don't know why. Because why is giant Gabi Garcia fighting this grandma? I don't know. But I wanted to see it. That's the whole reason why I downloaded the event, is because I wanted to see Gabi Garcia beat up. Undeniably, it's going to be a beating. She's going to beat this grandma nearly to death. And I wanted to watch because it's entertaining. I saw her beat up that grandma the other time, and that was entertaining. So I don't know. I like watching Gabi Garcia fight because it's a freak show. It's a spectacle. Gabi Garcia is a steroid monster. She looks like I guess she's really only 250 something pounds, but she's got abs of steel and she's just defined amazingly. And she doesn't look, her body is weird, man. Like, it is just ridiculously cut up and muscular, and man, does she take a lot of steroids. Oh, wow. I saw pictures of her when she was fat, And I just can't figure out how she went from like a heavyset woman to this behemoth, half man, half amazing, 10% woman type of thing. But I'm intrigued. I don't think Gabi Garcia is really ugly at all, but it's just, man, it's like a science experiment or something like that. But anyway, I was very sad to not see Gabi Garcia beat up that grandma. That would have been fun to watch. And that's another thing I like about Japanese cards. Some of these fights are just smash fights. And you know what's going to happen, and you just can't turn your head away. I watched the first couple fights. I watched Kichi Kunimoto versus Satoru Kitayako, great fight. Kano Watanabe versus Shizuka Sugiyama. I like that fight a lot. I gotta watch the rest of the card. It's like 5 hours long or something like that. But I'm excited to watch the this second round, and then I'm gonna watch the final round as well, and then we'll get back to it like probably next episode. But yeah, man, I really like the Rizin cards. Oh, the foot stomps and the head kicks. Those are cool too. They need to bring those back to the UFC, because that's the real nature of mixed martial arts. It's just a free fighting environment. And when people go for submissions like they do, and they go for different techniques like they do, realistically, you should be able to defend yourself with knees to the head, kicks to the head, all that kind of stuff. It shouldn't be illegal. Because it's a fight. If somebody's trying to break your arm, you should be able to step on their face, you know. If somebody's trying to take you down, you should be able to knee them in the head, you know, whether their hands are on the mat or whatever. That's just the consequences of trying to go for said technique. This is supposed to be a real combat simulation. This is what real combat is, you know, with no limits, no boundaries. I think that America needs to get mixed martial arts back to the spirit of it. I know it would lead to a lot more brutal finishes in a lot of cases, but that's real. You can't shoot for a double and just stay in on a position on your knees and just go, gung ho for a double and not pay for it with knees to the head and kicks to the head like in real life. So I think that the soccer kicks and stuff, man, it's more realistic. You know, it's more pure combat, and you get more finishes too, more decisive rounds. I also love the judging system. Less about rounds, more about damage, finishing the fight. It's more open to interpretation, and fight judging needs to be that way, because there's a million different things that go into it, especially if the fight wasn't very, let's say, the fight wasn't very it didn't have a lot that happened within it. Let's go ahead and get to the news here. Apparently, the UFC has banned the Jackson Wink photographer that made these comments about Chris Cyborg. Wow, I'm just reading this now. A post was made by, if you don't know the story, a post was made by a Jackson Wink photographer about Chris Cyborg being a man. He was talking about her, talking about Holly Holm, got beat up by a man she has nothing to be ashamed of. But apparently UFC has decided that the individual that made the comments, I believe his name is Aragon, Mark Aragon, that he is no longer welcome at UFC events. It's interesting, and like I'm reading the Bloody Elbow article here. It's very interesting because Dana White called Cyborg Wanderlei in a dress, and acted to be like her in heels. Joe Rogan suggested she had a penis. I mean, this isn't the first time somebody said something about Cyborg and her. Well, this is a lot is brought on by the fact that she used a lot of steroids and she has a lot of effects that linger physically in her appearance. Now, that being said, I'm a huge Cyborg fan, but I said Cyborg was a believing woman. She is a Christian, and it seems like whenever she has adversaries or enemies, that they all fall. And I think this is a good example of that, man. Cyborg with another win over her opposition. Cyborg beat Angela Magana, came after her. She won that one. Jackson Wink Photographer came after her. She won that one. And Cyborg continues to be victorious in all things. I think she is a Class A lady. Steroid use was big in Brazil some years ago, but yeah, man, she's got those lingering effects, but she's a great lady, and she's beating all of her opposition, man. It's good. I'm proud of her and happy for her because she seems like a sweethearted woman, and she's a great ambassador for the sport. So great for Cyborg, another victory for her over some try to be bullies. I didn't think the comments were that ridiculous. I mean, that is a Jackson Wink person. They're supposed to be for their fighter. You know, they're not supposed to be like, Cyborg, we love you, are they? You know, they're supposed to be like, she ain't shit, and she's a man, and we love Holly Holm. But apparently, in this 2017 world, you can't support your fighter like you want to. Yeah, Miesha Tate is apparently expecting a new baby girl, which is I don't know, man. I wasn't expecting this news, but she's got a new boyfriend, and she's got a new baby girl to go with it. Her new boyfriend's name is, I don't know, Johnny something or other, but yeah, I don't know if this is her first baby, but yeah, she's expecting a daughter. She's retired. She's in a happy new relationship post Brian Caraway, and congratulations, Miesha Tate. I thought she was okay. Apparently, this is Johnny Nunez from Tough Season 22. So yeah, wow. I was looking at this headline. I thought it was gonna be Mickey Gall. I was like, Mickey Gall's a baby's daddy, but it's not Mickey Gall. It's Johnny Nunez. Yeah. So congratulations to Miesha Tate. But I wish it was Mickey Gall, because that would be a lot juicier. Man, he'd be like, oh man, that'd be like the come up of the year. Like young up and coming fighter gets the cougar, you know, the cougar that was just let free from captivity of Brian Caraway. Miesha Tate was on straight. How does Johnny do this? Let me look at this. Oh, let me see. Is he the winner of the cougar race? He might be. I don't know. Oh man, how old is he? Let's see. Johnny Boy Nunez. Is he? He might have won the cougar out of captivity race. He is 32. So okay, he's not quite the young lion that won the cougar over. But yeah, man, I was hoping it was Mickey Gall. I was gonna be like, damn, Mickey Gall. He went from, you know, being a what was he, like 1-0 fighter, beating CM Punk, getting in the UFC. Now he got Miesha Tate pregnant. He'd have been like winning, like big time. But it is what it is. Let's see some more news. Ooh, Mackenzie Dern is set for her debut. That is big. And I'm excited about it. She's gonna be fighting Ashley Yoder, which should be a great fight. Two grapplers going at it. I actually think it's a horrible idea to put Dern up against Yoder because of the fact that she's such a good grappler. But yeah, UFC 222, we're gonna see Ashley Yoder and Mackenzie Dern face off, and I think Mackenzie Dern should get more of a can. They want her to be a big superstar. They want her to, be a next Ronda Rousey, or she's got the good looks and the charm and the charisma and the pedigree to do all that kind of stuff. But in this era of mixed martial arts, don't fast track your prospects. Give the fans time to catch on. Like Mackenzie Dern, you got her, right? Let her get a bunch of cam fights, win those convincingly. Like, you tell the world she's a great grappler, but has the world seen it? No, they haven't. We have to believe your word for it, and then she's going to be getting on the upside of, the competition, so we might not ever see it as pronounced as it actually is. Introduce her to us. Then let's get her maybe a reality show, and get people to love her good looks and her charisma and start to connect with her, Like, don't fast track your prospects like this. Give us 3 or 4 years to fall in love with Mackenzie Dern and get hard on the Mackenzie Dern bandwagon. Let her improve her game, because she needs to make a lot of improvements before she's ready for top level competition. And then we'll get into the big fights for Mackenzie Dern. But I'm not running the UFC, so I can't necessarily get all huge and big into, what they should be doing, why it isn't the best move. That's their decision. Man, is there any more news? I know Conor McGregor, he's dangling that carrot in front of the world concerning, who will it be? Tony Ferguson or Khabib Nurmagomedov? It'll be who Conor says it'll be, because he is the man and he picks who he wants to fight. But, man, I don't think there's too much else super interesting to cover. I know the UFC is coming here in about a week. I'm trying to see if I got press credentials to the fight. I don't know. I applied. I hope that I might have got some, but we shall see. We shall see. We'll see. And I'll update you guys on that. But like I said, we got a bunch of big interviews ahead. I guess we're getting out of here for now. Man, let's see. What do we have on tap? So I've got Josh Emmett on tap. I've got Vaughn Alexander, Mikel Labou. I'm going to try and get a hold of Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, Pearl Gonzalez. A lot of people that we touch bases on with the past. Hopefully Francis Ngannou. A lot of people, man. I got a lot of people on deck and for the future. School of Black Negro Jitsu is looking good. We're moving up in the world. We had arguably the hottest young superstar in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on last year with Craig Jones. That was our first year. Actually, School of Black Negro Jiu-Jitsu hadn't even been on a year. It's been on 6 months, so we're killing it for 6 months, man. We're getting the big interviews, but what do I have for you guys lined up for this one? I've got Julian, Juicy J, and Erosa, man. We had a hell of a talk. Me and Juicy J, we really had a great talk and had a great sit down. So I hope you guys enjoy it. We talked about his time in the house on that season. I believe it was the Conor McGregor versus Uriah Faber season of Tough. He talks about all the things that were going on in the house. We talked about his career, fighting overseas, the UFC's business plan and everything like that. We had an awesome conversation. Juicy J loves to talk. He's got a great personality. Got to have him back on soon. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of School Black Negro Jitsu. Remember, subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play. It's free. Enroll now. And enjoy this interview with Julian, Juicy J, Erosa. Peace out, guys.
Julian, Juicy J, Erosa, welcome to the School of Black Negro Jitsu. It is excellent to have you here today. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Julian, let me just get a little bit of your background first. Where are you from? How did you get started fighting? How'd you get into this whole fight game?
Yeah, originally I'm from Washington area, Yakima, Washington, that is, and I got into fighting. I was, I
Wait,
used to
wait, wait,
skateboard a
wait.
lot.
What's Yakima? Where is that in Washington?
Yakima is kind of, central. I would say central Washington. A lot of people think of Washington as like rainy and cold and stuff, but Yakima is actually the desert area of Washington, and we get all 4 seasons, but we get like we get really warm in the summertime. It's anywhere between the hundreds and in the 90s and stuff, and it's dry. It's like a dry desert over there, and kind
So
of
you
a
say
small
it's a
town.
desert in Washington? I thought Washington was wet. I don't think
Yeah,
of Washington and think dry.
yeah, that's what everybody, and honestly, we do get a lot of rain, or not a lot of rain, but we get, in Yakima, we get all 4 seasons, like I said. So we get rain, we get snow, we get a couple of feet of snow every year. And, but in the summertime, we probably get about, 7 or 8 months of, kind of dry climate. And, it's really warm in the summer months as well. So, but people don't really understand that. So, cause I just recently moved out to Las Vegas. And so I tell people that I'm from Washington, they're like, oh, so it's a big drastic change in weather. And I'm like, no, not really. It's really similar to Vegas as well in the summertime. So when I moved out here, it was pretty similar. It was just probably about, 10 degrees warmer over here when we moved. So, but yeah, so Yakima is kind of a small town in Washington, and not very many people know of it. It's kind of, in the middle of Spokane and Seattle.
So how'd you get into the fight game? What sparked your interest? What's your martial arts background? Give me all those typical. Give me all the background on Julian Rosa.
Yeah, I originated. I was just kind of a tough skateboarder kid, and I enjoyed skating. And we got into some, being a skateboarder, you get into fights and at the skate park, and we just kind of had that attitude. And for some reason,
What do you mean you get into fights at the skate park? No, I don't know you get into fights at the skate park. Why do you get into fights at the skate park?
Honestly, I think people just, I don't know if it just comes with the territory or not, but I felt like being a skateboarder and always being at the skate park was kind of like it's like a daycare with no adults almost. Like, it was kind of a playground for, anywhere from 11-year-olds all the way up to, grown adults, but everybody was kind of, on their own and was able to do what they wanted. So, I was an avid skateboarder. I was actually trying to do it to do good, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. And there was other people there that go there just to hang out, smoke weed, drink, or whatever. And so with that kind of territory brings, a lot of people that, got into fights and stuff. And being a skateboarder, I don't know if I was surrounded by that kind of atmosphere or whatever, but there was one summer I was kind of on the smaller end when I graduated high school and stuff, but there was a summer that I just kind of, said, screw it. I'm not going to let anybody, bully me. Not really bully me, but I was just going to stand my ground. And I'd never really been in any fights. And this one summer I got into, a handful of fights and almost got in trouble one time because this kid wanted to press charges against me, even though he started the fight and whatever, but they got dropped or whatever. And, but anyway, so I enjoyed fighting, but I didn't want to get in trouble for it. And I kind of watched a couple of UFC things, and it was back when like the WEC was the only the free fights that you could watch. The UFC was only pay-per-views, and it was like once every 4 months or whatever. And so I watched a lot of the WEC with my father, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty interesting. And, and I didn't realize that we had a mixed martial arts gym in Yakima, Washington until after I kind of looked out for it. And then I heard that there was. And so I went in there and started training. And, after a few months I was hooked, and I just, it just went from there.
Awesome. I never saw that on I don't know if you remember the Rob and Big show. I never saw Rob or any of these other skateboard guys talking about fighting. They never look like fighters, but that's an interesting aspect of a skateboard culture.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
So you started training to better, to stay out of trouble or be able to fight. You enjoy fighting, but didn't want to get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
What year was this exactly?
I would say probably 2008.
So you had your first professional fight 2 years later, right? Against Angel Diaz?
Yeah, I was I've been training for about a year and a half or 2 years, anywhere between, it was in between a year and a half and 2 years before I turned pro, and I was an amateur. I had 10 amateur fights already, and kind of where, like, it's kind of switched over now, like the amateur scene now versus 10 years ago when I first started, is so much different, back, and then kind of where I'm from as well, there were so many people that were just fighting because it was fun, like, that weren't even training, that were fighting amateur fights. There's guys that were taking fights in the crowd because the guy didn't show up. Nowadays the amateur scene is like the professional scene now. Like, you have to get things done.
It's
you have to get
identical.
paid. Yeah. So
there's no difference except for the fact that I guess professionals are going to get paid and amateurs are not. The events are big. Like, it's almost kind of a ripoff to the fighters because they're fighting the same quality of fight and they're not getting paid, but the promoter is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, at the amateur scene, I think the pay that you get, basically, because you don't get paid in money, but the pay that you get is an experience. And before, then there's been places like even California for a long time previously, you couldn't be amateur. They didn't have amateur shows, and so there was guys in California that were just turning pro and had 0 amateur fights, and I couldn't imagine doing that. I had 10 amateur fights before I turned pro, and just the title professional fighter was enough to make me a little bit more nervous. Being at a bigger show, getting paid, and being a professional fighter, I thought it was going to be, a whole different level. Like, I thought, but then once I realized that after my first couple of professional fights, that it was just a tiny bit step up from amateur. It was just the better amateurs that had turned pro. And so, but honestly, 10 amateur fights, even though I didn't get paid for it, I enjoyed it. And it was a great learning experience. I was undefeated. I wish, honestly, I don't wish I would that I lose any time, but I think if I would have lost as an amateur maybe once or twice, I would have I would have been able to learn a little bit more. But because I was undefeated as an amateur, and so going to the professionals, I never knew what it was like to lose. So the first time that I had somebody in the cage that was just as good as me and was able to push, and I ended up having my first loss as a professional, like, years later, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, I wish I knew what it felt like to lose and, take that experience with me into the professional level as well.
So that comes to another question. When you got your first loss, I guess against Drew Brokenshire.
Yeah.
Were you not? What was the quality of your training partners up there in Yakima, Washington? You said you never really been pushed. Did you ever really feel the need to go out and challenge yourself and find better training? What did you do after that first loss to improve yourself? How did you deal with that?
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't being pushed in the training room. I just had never been into a fight where the guy was my equal and that he was just as tough as me and he was going to push to the bitter end. And Brokenshire is a great mixed martial artist, and he's a great fighter. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a fight where I was like, holy shit, like, I might lose this fight. Like, I'd never been down in any fight. All my amateur fights were finishes. All of them were in the first round except for one that I finished in the second round. All my amateur fights, 10 of them. And then all my professional fights were, I think I had one decision that I won, but everything else were finishes, all my first 9 fights. And so I fought him for a title, and we went all 5 rounds. So it wasn't like he finished me or anything, but, it got to the point where, he was breaking me down, and I'd never really been broken down in a fight like that. And I didn't break, but he had, wore me down, and I was going to fight to the bitter end as well. But it was, the first time I'd ever been pushed like that inside of a fight. Because back where I was training at the time, I had a great training camp, and I had a lot of good people around me supporting me, and, a lot of good training partners at that time. And we would do a little bit of cross training here and there. But honestly, the majority of my training camps were in Yakima, and I didn't have a huge stable of training partners, but, I was one of the smaller guys, so I was getting my butt kicked on a regular basis, and that was helping me out. But honestly, a lot of my training stems from just kind of like a personal push of my own. Because, there's only so much you can do inside the gym with your training partners. There's a lot you have to do by yourself. You have to make sure your weight cut's good. You have to make sure you're getting your extra cardio in, and you have to be, you have to be the guy that pushes yourself to show up every night at practice and to get the 2 a days done, the 3 days done, or whatever it is, the rest and recovery and all that stuff. So, I've always been a self-motivated person, and I think, that's always kind of pushed me to be at the top of my game in the majority of my fights. I think there's a big gap in there for mental as well. I think fighting is, like 80% mental. So I've always been a mentally strong person, but also I've been physically strong, and my cardio has been good because of me pushing myself. So it had nothing necessarily to do with my training partners at my gym in Yakima. It just, it was just the first time I've been pushed like that.
Now, let me ask you a question. Now, you, of course, had your first couple losses there. You got some more wins. But how exactly did you get on the Ultimate Fighter? I think that's a big step in your career. How did that process work? And then what was it like inside the house? I believe that's season 22, McGregor and Faber. What was that experience like being with Conor McGregor? Well, let's just get to how did you get on the Ultimate Fighter? Let's just do that.
Honestly, to get on the Ultimate Fighter was a cakewalk for me because at the time I was 14-2 as a professional fighter and relatively unknown, in the grand scheme of things. I was always known well in the Northwest and stuff, but it seemed like people didn't really know me outside of the Northwest and that regional circuit. So when I got when I went to the tryouts, you only have to have 3 professional fights and a winning record. So you could be 2-1 in tryout for the Ultimate Fighter. And there's a lot of people you see with these, really small records that get on the Ultimate Fighter. But the Ultimate Fighter is there to build these guys up and to put these guys in the situation to better their fight careers. And for me, I walked on as a 14-2 professional fighter, and they didn't. You do like 30 seconds of grappling and like 30 seconds of mitt holding or whatever, or hitting mitts, and they watch you to see how you move and this and that. But 30 seconds ain't nothing, or a minute, or whatever it was. It was like 30 or 60 seconds. Like, there's not much you can see somebody do in that amount of time. It wasn't like I went out there and like subbed the dude like 4 or 5 times in the minute that we grappled. Me and this dude grappled, and neither one of us subbed each other out, and we were on top, on bottom for a second, and that was it, and then I hit pads for 30 seconds, and that was it. And then they just keep moving you on and on and on, and people get cut, and it just gets smaller and smaller until you get to the finals. And you do a little interview with the guy, the producer and stuff. And so if you have the 2 main things you need to have to get on the Ultimate Fighter is a great record, first of all. And 14-2 is, that's better than some champions in the UFC. So having that record helped me out. And also just having a good personality and being able to talk and entertain somebody. And when I talked to the producer, I wasn't, just sitting there like, yes, no, yes, no. I was, interacting with them, talking with them, telling them, how I felt like I deserved to be on the Ultimate Fighter and how I feel like I could be an entertaining fighter and how I could be, a good character to be on the Ultimate Fighter. And so, those 2 things really helped me get there. And, I didn't have to do much. I just had to show with my record, and I was a shoo-in for the Ultimate Fighter. I had one of the best records on the show as well. So that's basically how it happened.
And the trials were in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Okay. How was it? You were on Team Faber. How did you like that experience? What do you think you gained from it in your career? How good of coaches you ride Faber and I guess the other Team Alpha Male guys? I did not watch this season in great detail. You got to search all over for the episodes.
Yeah.
Although I did cover the events for fantasy, so I'm definitely familiar with all the fighters. But how much do you think that time on the show aided your career? Is it the best time that you had in your career as far as learning and training went?
Yeah, it was, to be surrounded by a group of people like Team Alpha Male, is amazing. And not only that, even though we were, on the favorite side, we got to meet and got to interact with a lot of the guys from McGregor's side as well. And, all those guys, even on both sides, they were emotional and they wanted their team to win. But in the end, they were happy to see all of us fighters in a group, push and, and fight and try to better ourselves and better our careers. And, it was a good time. I enjoyed being on Faber's side. I would have enjoyed being on either side, but I'd met Faber a couple of times before, and so it was comfortable. And all those guys on that side, had great knowledge, and they were really easygoing, and it was easy for us. It wasn't like we were in it wasn't like a drill sergeant or anything. We showed up and we got to practice what we wanted to practice. He gave us our options on what we wanted to do. It would have been nice. It would be nice to train with Faber and their guys without having without being in the house, because in the house I fought 4 times, so I was constantly getting ready for fights. So like it was hard for me to focus on training and bettering my technique, because I was always worried about my weight. I was always worried about getting ready for the fight. So if you were getting ready for a fight, they would have you do something separate versus kind of something that you were trying to learn and progress your skill set. I would never really, there was a few things I picked up, but I was never trying to progress my skill set. I was just trying to make sure I was ready for the fight that was coming up, because it was like I was fighting like almost every other week or every week, it felt like. So I had to focus 100% on my fights versus focusing 100% on my training or being able to break that up. But yeah.
So when you're an Ultimate Fighter, you really just getting ready for fight to fight and the challenges that next fight presents, huh?
Yeah, and well, that's only if you're still in the tournament. There's guys that got knocked out the first fight in, so they had a whole month there. We were there for 6 weeks, so there were some guys that had 5.5 weeks that they were out of the tournament, and so they were, those guys were able to really focus on helping us get ready for our fights, but at the same time, put 100% into their training and really try to pick up as much as they possibly could. Which is, so it's a win-win situation just being on the Ultimate Fighter altogether. Obviously, you want to make it as far as possible, and you want to get your name out there, and you want to make it, you want the whole goal is to get into the UFC, and the only way to do that is to make it as far as you can on that show. But if you get knocked out, you got to make the best of it, and there's nothing but a wealth of knowledge around you. So if you might get a second chance on the Ultimate Fighter. So you see, time and time again where guys get injured, can't make weight or whatever, and they have a guy hop back in. And so, it's always good to be ready, but for the guys that got knocked out early, they were able to focus more on the training. I fought every single day. I fought the last day we were there. That's the last fight that I had was the last day. And then right after I fought, they sent us, they basically, sent us back to the hotel, and then we flew out the next day. So, there was never really any in-between time where I was like, you know what, maybe I'm just going to focus on trying to learn, this technique and that technique. I was able to pick things up, but like I said, it was me focused. I was, fighting on average every 8 to 9 days. So it was like every time I would fight, I'd make weight, I'd fight, I would recover, and then I'd get right back at it. So,
is that why people don't look at their best on the Ultimate Fighter? Is because the constant weight cutting and having to recover and come back? I know most fighters, the Ultimate Fighter is not a great representation of who they actually are. So do you think that a lot of that plays into it, is just being tired all the time from those constant cuts? Because back-to-back cuts, I don't even think that's healthy, is it?
It just depends, because like I did the Ultimate Fighter at 155 pounds. I also fight at 145. I think 145 is my actual weight class, but I'm able to get away with 155 because of my height, my length, and my my ability to be able to handle the strength of bigger guys as well. And so there's pros and cons to either side, but for me, going on the Ultimate Fighter, there was guys at 155 that was tough cuts for them. Like for me, I was walking around at the max, I was walking around 165. So I was able. There was a couple of times I cut only 3 pounds to make weight, so I was okay. But there were some other guys, and that's actually a big thing for the Ultimate Fighter. There's a lot of guys who you'll see who fight on the Ultimate Fighter at a weight class up. And then when they get into the UFC or when they fight other fights, you'll see that they had dropped the weight class. Like, there are plenty of guys. A lot of guys that were on our show, there was half the guys on our show could also make 145 as well. But for me to make 145 constantly would be a headache for me. It'd be tough. There was a couple of guys that were making 55, and they were monsters. I had to fight Mehdi Baghdad, and that guy was pretty big. But I also had to fight Abner, and not Artem, but because people get those guys confused. But,
Abner Lavois, I know he is.
Yeah, Abner. That guy, no joke. He was the third fight that I won when I was in the house. And me and him had a battle, but that guy, no joke. We made weight on one day, and we both made 155 or 156, and then after I beat him the next day, like a day and a half or 2 days later. So it was like 2.5 or 3 days after we weighed in at 156. That guy was 200 pounds. So like that guy was the biggest guy in the house, and I don't know, like that guy, they call it his nickname's like Skeletor or something, and it's no joke. That guy looks like a goddamn skeleton when he makes weight. He is so skinny, and he
So you
cuts
say he
so
was
much
200
weight.
pounds?
3 days after we made weight, he was 200 pounds. That's 44 pounds that guy put on in 3 days. And
That's ridiculous.
I was 3 days. I mean, but constantly I was under 166 pounds, 165. That's where I was hovering the whole time. So I had to fight. I was the guy that had to tame these monsters because they kept putting me against these big guys, thinking that they were gonna, snatch me. Like Mehdi Baghdad's a big guy too. That guy was, naturally walking around about 190 or 180, 188, 190, and he was the first guy that they put me up to after I had, got into the house. But they had matched that matchup for me on their side because they thought that he was going to be too big and his striking was going to be too good for me. But luckily for me, I'm pretty good on my feet, and it's just my movement that's really unorthodox, and somebody that's a bit heavier and bigger and kind of flat-footed is going to have a hard time with me. And that's what Mehdi, had a hard time with me. I was able to pick him apart. We didn't have, a barn burner, like we weren't like slinging leather, but, I was able to pick him apart, relatively easy and win that fight. But I had to fight him, and he was like the second biggest guy. And then I had to fight Abner, who was the first biggest guy. And so I was fighting all the big guys, even though I'm tall. I'm not very big by any means. And, it was crazy, yeah, because Abner, that guy was suffering on a regular basis. The whole time we were in this show, we would never see that guy around because all he would do he'd go train, and he would go home and go into his bed and rest. And because he didn't want to be around all the food and all the temptation of that. And that guy was already sucked up trying to maintain walking around at like 170, and he was already sucked up. And then for him to cut even more weight, that guy was, the day that we had to make weight, we woke up at like whatever time it was, like 7 or 8 o'clock. And he had left like 4 hours earlier. Like he left at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and he was going to start cutting weight that day. Like it was just absolutely ridiculous. And for some guys that,
did he look better after he lost? Did he start eating and stuff like that?
Yeah, he told me after we had fought, and we were, because they had the 2 showers in the Ultimate Fighter, like where you fight at the gym and stuff. There was a place where you could go shower, and they had 2 showers. And right after we both fought, we both hopped into the separate showers. But they're in the same room, so you can hear the other person, you can talk to him and stuff. And he had really broken English, but I was able to get across that he was actually kind of happy that he had lost, because he said that he didn't think he could make weight again. That he he was so, like, that was his number one worry, was weight. And when you're in the Ultimate Fighter house like that, you shouldn't be worried that much about your weight. So that's why it's always good to do a weight class above, because then you can make weight without having to worry about it, and you can kind of just focus on your fighting. And I think that's the smartest thing to do, because 1 or 2 or 3 cuts in the house, at the lowest weight that you can make is it's difficult. And if I was ever to do the Ultimate Fighter again, I mean, I think I could do 145. I would just have to prepare myself physically before I made it on the house. I would have to get my weight to where I was walking around at a decent amount to make 145 relatively easy.
Okay. What was it like being in the same house with Conor McGregor? I don't even think Conor McGregor was that rich back then. I think he was still making $50,000 a fight. But what was he like? Of course, you fought one of his teammates, Artem Lobov. Did he jump in the cage after Artem won like he did for Bellator? What was his reaction to Lobov's win? What was that like, being around Conor McGregor?
Yeah, people always ask me about how Conor was. I think he's just more of like a TV personality, and I think he has 2 sides to him. He's definitely an emotional guy, and he wants his side to win. And if he has a guy fighting, he wants him to win. And I can't blame him for that. But he was a little over the top sometimes. But honestly, it's funny because there'd be one day where Conor and Faber are going at it a little bit, talking shit to each other. But then a few days later, we had a pool party at the house with all the, Dana White was enjoying our season so much that he rewarded us with a big pool party, brought a bunch of strippers over and shit, and a bunch of alcohol and stuff. But there's still a handful of us that are still in this competition. So
wait a minute, Dana White brought a bunch of strippers over. Did he buy strippers or escorts?
All right, so basically, he brought a bunch of girls over. and we kept asking them where these girls were from. Like a lot of the European dudes were like kind of all over these girls, and we basically all got the consensus that these girls were from one of the Wild Horses or whatever, or Crazy Horse or whatever, Crazy Horse 2 or 3. I don't know exactly which it is, but it's a strip club here in Las Vegas. But we basically figured out that most of these girls were, working girls. And so I don't think they were escorts. I think they were, well, shoot, I don't know. We only knew them for a day or whatever, or we only, were there for like a day with them at this pool party for a few hours. But I'm pretty sure they were, the majority of them were strippers. But that's just kind of the consensus that we all.
If they were putting out, they might have been strippers / escorts. That's why I asked. Like, were they? Was there any sexual activity with these girls?
No, they had a couple of guys. They had a couple of guys in black suits, like big security guard looking dudes at the top of our stairs, so nobody could go upstairs with, like, you couldn't go in any rooms. But I did hear that Connor was trying to get one of them to go upstairs with him, and that one of the security guys had to kick him out, and Connor was like giving him shit for it. But yeah, anyway, so we were at at this little pool party or whatever, and all the guys from McGregor's side and our side, like all of our coaches were there, and McGregor and all both sides were having a great time, arm in arm, just joking and laughing and having a good time. And then just 3 days before, I think just a few days before was the big blowout that we had where like Cody was pushed Conor McGregor, and they were talking shit to each other and getting serious in each other's faces. But it's funny how how one day they can be at each other's throats, and the next day they can be arm in arm. But I think it's just that whole camaraderie of fighters. I think things get heated. I think fighters are a little emotional, and they want their sides to win, and they think that every fighter thinks that they're the best. You have to, and so you're always real competitive and stuff, which Conor is. But when you get out into just kind of a laid back environment, I think it just opens everybody up, and we all have respect for each other as fighters. So it just becomes kind of like a brotherly kind of love versus, wanting to, cause, even with with brothers and siblings, you want to, some days you want to rip their heads off, and some days, you love them. So I think that's how I think it's similar to that, because, they were drinking, having a good time. And then, the days before and days afterwards, they're talking shit to each other. So it was entertaining, but Conor's just a normal guy. I think he just has that TV personality that he puts on every once in a while.
So Dana White bought strippers and booze over. Did you guys get? I'm glad they had security there, because those could turn into really bad situations. Yeah. I guess if you're gonna poison the young guys with strippers and stuff, you gotta make sure it doesn't get out of control and you catch some cases and whatnot. It seems like a bad combination. But did any of the fighters get smashed or drunk while in the house?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with it, having to cut weight too? I mean, how does that affect guys?
I think it's just a mixed bag of things. When you really think about it, there was some guys who could handle that stuff, like like Ryan Hall is a perfect example. That guy would drink a couple of beers every single night, whether he just made weight and he's fighting the next day, or he's training and he wanted to go home and have a couple of beers, or like a glass of wine or whatever. And that's just, his normal routine. And that guy was able to do that, and I thought that was weird to me, because I'm the type of dude that,
Ryan Hall seems like a total geek, man.
Yeah. He's definitely an intelligent guy, and he knows a lot about a lot of things. And he's a super cool guy, just a little bit eccentric or whatever the word is. But he's a little bit different, but he's one of those guys that I could just tell is, really smart, and he knows a lot about a lot. But yeah, he used to drink, a couple of beers every single night. And I thought that was weird. But then when you really break it down, like a little bit of alcohol in your system is not going to affect you. If you're able to only have a couple, but if you're drinking hard liquor, if you're having 6-7 shots in a night, that's going to affect you the next day. But if you have, 1 or 2 beers or a glass of wine or whatever, honestly, that's not going to bother you, hardly at all. So, there was times where we drank too much, and cause it was weird, cause there would be times where there would be a week in between fights, and we're like, we thought that was like an eternity, because you were around these guys 24/7. So everything slowed down. We had no TV. We didn't have our phones. the only time we were able to watch TV is if they brought a TV in to watch the UFC cards and stuff. And so, but we, you know, everything really slowed down. You know, like 2 or 3 days felt like, you know, 2 or 3 weeks for us. And so, after your fight, sometimes, you know, you'd celebrate and have a couple of drinks or whatever. And, you know, 7 days later, you might be fighting again. But, you know, for me, it was easy because I was walking around, you know, only 6, 7, 8 pounds heavy. So I was able, I mean, that's easy by any means if you ask any fighter. But when you're talking about like 17, 18, 19, you know, those type of pounds, then you really got to be diligent about everything. And you can't be drinking extra calories, you know, and all that stuff. And so, there was, you know, like I said, it was a mixed bag of things. There was guys like Ryan Hall, Ryan was probably the smallest guy in the house. And so he was like, there would be times where he would just wake up at weight. He would never, hardly have to even cut weight. And there was, you know, so for him, he didn't have to worry about, you know, he could eat kind of what he wanted. He could drink what he wanted. He'd do what he wanted. And, the guy's, you know, a phenomenal grappler. So he could always rely on that. And, for other guys like Abner, like I was saying, that guy, fuck, man, that guy was eating like he was starving himself, it seemed, and he wasn't even hanging around anybody because he didn't want to, you know, be tempted to eat or drink anything like that. And, you know, so he won it, you know, and, but there was guys, you know, that were knocked out of the competition and, you know, wanted to enjoy themselves a little bit. So they had a little bit more to drink, and, you know, you can't blame them for that. You know, it's almost like a luxurious prison. So, if you're able to have a little bit of winding down time and able to focus kind of more on training and not have to worry about having your cardio up ready for a fight, then yeah, there was a few guys that drink a little bit, but you know, it was never too excessive. There was never really a time where there was anybody getting like smashed on a regular basis. We all, you know, had our moments, but that was about it.
So you say it's a luxurious prison. Back in the day, I don't know if the rules have changed, but could you have TV, video games? What could you have in the house?
Yeah, you couldn't have anything. There was like you couldn't even have any clothes with logos on them. Like obviously they want to make sure that you don't have like a New Era hat with like a team on it or whatever. Everything had to be plain or UFC or Reebok, and so they would give you a lot of those clothes. But any clothes that you packed had to be all like blank stuff. And then like anything had to have tape over it if it had any kind of logo on it and stuff. And you couldn't have your cell phone, obviously. The most technology that we could have were watches. So like everybody had like, we all had got watches, and we all acted like our watches were kind of like our news, like our cell phone at the time. Like it was kind of funny because that was the most like, you know, that was the most technology that we had was these watches, and so we'd use them for our timers and our alarm clocks and stuff. But yeah, we didn't have any TVs. The only time they ever brought a TV in, like I said, was when there would be UFC cards, and they would let us watch UFC cards. So they'd bring the TV in, they'd hook it up, we'd watch the UFC card, and they'd take the TV back out and leave. And so like that was cool. Like those nights were super fun because we were able to watch TV, and then you could see commercials in between. So that was kind of cool, and it was just kind of like it's funny.
You talking about then we can see commercials. This is worse than prison. They're like cool commercials, and they have regular people at them.
It's funny. It's like a flashback to reality because like, and you don't like really like they say, you know, you don't know what you have until it's gone. And even just the small things like watching commercials, like where people like, you know, normally they're like, I hate watching commercials, and they fast forward and whatnot. But like to watch commercials, we're like, oh man, this is like reminds me of home, you know. So like, it was cool to like, you know, get to watch have those nights where we had fights and we were able to watch fights and watch commercials, and kind of just, it was cool because we all kind of just got along as a group versus two different teams. So it was nice to have those nights where instead of like, we're like, oh, you know, fuck those guys because they're on the other team, where we're like, you know, we're all fighters having just a good time, just enjoying fights. And, you know, that's when we were able to like come together versus like, you know, being split apart.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Now, you had about, let's see, oh man, how many UFC fights did you have?
I only had 2 UFC fights.
2 UFC fights, 1-1, and then did they cut you after being 1-1?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people are, you know, and it's, a lot of people ask me about that, and, you know, it's crazy too, because like right now I'm 20-5 as a professional fighter. I have like a huge record, and I've fought a lot of guys, and, you know, I've done my work to try to get back to the UFC, but you know, when they first cut me, you know, you know, it was just bad timing for me because what happened was, you know, right after I fought Ishihara and lost to him, which that fight was kind of, so what happened with that fight was Ishihara's a guy I should beat 9 times out of 10. And what happened was, it was kind of like that surreal feeling. Like, in my mind, that was kind of my first UFC fight, because the first one that I had was on the finale against Marcin, but Marcin was in the house, and it didn't feel like a huge UFC fight, because it was at the Cosmopolitan. It was kind of a smaller venue. We were in the smaller cage, and it didn't feel that like crazy. And I can't remember who was commentating on that, but my second fight with Ishihara felt like my first UFC fight, because I was at we were at the MGM, and we were, it was Conor versus Diaz that night, and it was, Miesha versus Holly, and so like it was big, and I walked out there, and I can hear Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg talking, and it was just super surreal for me, and it was one of those times where I just kind of had an out-of-body experience and wasn't able to fight at all, and I don't even remember any of that fight in my head. So it's difficult for me, because I was like, you know what, I didn't perform tonight. It was one of those off nights, and but in my head I was like, you know what, I lost a fight, but they're not going to cut me off for losing one fight. I was the furthest American that made it in the house, besides them bringing back Ryan to win it. But even after Ryan won the Ultimate Fighter, he was still 3-1 in the Ultimate Fighter. I was 3-1 as well. So like, I made it further than all the Americans. I got fight of the season bonus, so they obviously enjoyed my fighting style. And for them to cut me after one loss really was upsetting for me. But it was because they were selling the UFC, and they were trying to cut as much as they could to make the sale as good as possible for them. So. Sean Shelby had contacted my coach at the time, and had told him, hey, we had to cut Julian, but, keep him fighting, get him a couple more wins, and we'll get him back in the UFC. And, ever since then, right after that, I fought I fought twice, and I won 2 fights, and I was trying to get back in the UFC, and they were still not really responding to me. And so I went and fought again in London and beat the crap out of this kid. But we went a 5-round decision, and they gave him the decision, which was at Cage Warriors for Conor McGregor's old 45 belt. So I thought it was a good opportunity for me to win that belt and go and get back in the UFC. So, if I would have won that fight, I have no doubt in my mind that they would have brought me back. And but I lost that fight because it's a bullshit decision, and that's a fight. If you watch it, you clearly see that I almost knocked him out, and that dude was puking, and it's my fault too. I should have finished him because I was in dude's hometown, but so I lost that fight, and then I went to win another 2 fights, and then I lost another fight, and then I just won my last fight. And so right now I'm 5-2 since they've cut me, and it sucks because I'll start to build my my wins back up, and then I'll lose, and then and I message Sean Shelby all the time, like, hey man, I'll take a short notice fight at 45 or 55. I'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere, kind of thing.
Now let me ask you a question. Why are you so stuck on going to the UFC when the fighting, there's so much money to be made throughout the world, Rizin, KSW, people are paying as good or better. You're a championship level fighter outside of the UFC. Obviously, you almost won the Cage Warriors belt, probably should have. Can't you get paid more money to fight somewhere else and be their champion at a quality organization that's bringing in 10, 20,000 people a show, ACB, and places like this, and they're more it is better, more healthier, of an atmosphere, not so cutthroat, 2 or 3 fights a year out. Wouldn't you rather want to go to ACB, KSW, Ahmad, or something like that and make just as much or more than go back to the UFC at this point? Or how do you feel?
There's so many, pros and cons of things. People think that, you can go to this place or that place and make great money, and you can, but you have to be one of their favorites. Like I went and fought over at Cage Warriors, and they were paying the kid that I fought, Paddy Pimblett, was getting paid 3 or 4 times more than I was getting paid for the same fucking fight, and I beat the shit out of that kid. And so it's like a slap in my face, because not only did I get a bad decision, but that cuts my pay in half, and Paddy's getting paid already 4 times more than I was. And I don't know exactly what he was getting paid, but I know he was getting paid good money, because he had said it in interviews that he didn't really care to go to the UFC because he was making just as much money fighting for Cage Warriors. And I got paid, they offered me $2,500 to show, $2,500 to win. And so I only got $2,500 to show, and I had to fly all the way out to London. I had a brutal weight cut, and that kid missed weight. and he had to go cut weight after, and he lives there. It's like, man, I show up, I made weight. I was actually 1.5 pounds under, and he was like 2-3 pounds over, and he had to go cut the weight. And then they're gonna give me a bullshit decision, and then think that I want to come back and fight for them again. Like, give me a break, man. Like if you're gonna rob me, I mean, at least be honest about it. Don't if they would have given me a split decision loss, at least I would have respected them a little bit more. But there was a judge who gave him 4 out of the 5 rounds, and I almost knocked him out twice in 2 separate rounds. And that kid couldn't even walk, and he was puking. And the people thought he was puking of blood after that fight, but he says it was chocolate or whatever, but it looked like blood. Anyways, it's like, but and some of these other organizations would be cool. I would totally do it. I've reached out to, World Series of Fighting. I've reached out to, Bellator. I've reached out to a lot of different places, but there's stipulations on things, and there's a lot of biased stuff going on, especially when you're out of the country, because they don't have the same regulations on the commissions. And so I didn't even know that until after my fight in London, but they don't have the same regulations on their commissions, so they can have biased judges. Obviously, they're going to say they don't have biased judges, but there's no regulation on that over there. So it's different regulations than here in the States. So when you're fighting for the UFC, at least you're going to get a fair shake some of the time. Obviously, there's going to be bad judging and stuff, but the UFC, you're starting to see now where the judging is becoming more and more fair. But at some of these other organizations, I mean, if you don't finish the guy, you're losing. You could beat the crap out of a dude for, however many rounds. And I'm not going to say I beat Patty all 5 rounds, because I don't think I did. But, I put a beating on that kid, and he couldn't even walk straight. And I walked him down the last 2 rounds and almost knocked him out in one of those last rounds. And for, a couple of the judges to give him more rounds, like give him the majority of the rounds, it blows my mind. But so that's the only risk. It's the risk and reward. It's like, if I would go over there and fight, or if I go to Russia and fight, or if I go to some of these other places and fight, if it's out of the country, then that's a gamble you're taking. You have to finish some of these guys, and some people are just hard to finish. Like I'm not one of those explosive Melvin Gallards or something. I'm one of those guys that's gonna pick you apart, and I'll try to get the finish, and I do get a lot of finishes in my fights, but there's a big possibility if I'm fighting another tough kid that I might not be able to finish him. And I don't want to have, I don't have to worry about that in my fight or before my fight, leading up to it, thinking, oh shit, I got to finish this guy, and that's going to affect the way I fight. I want to fight how I fight, and I want to get a fair shake. And so, the thing about the UFC is that not only they pay good, they take care of you really well, but at the same time, you're going to get the majority of a fair shake versus some of these other places. If you go out of the country, or if you're a new guy in the organization and you're fighting a favorite, you're not going to get as fair of a shake as you would in the UFC. And, you might get paid decent money, but I don't want to get paid to be the guy that's there to lose. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm still, I'm still trying to get my wins and get my record and push to, make this a living for myself as well. And I'm not trying to take stupid fights at places that I might, get a bad decision for no reason, and lose a fight for, something so stupid as that.
Very interesting. I've never heard that side of it. I know that you got to make friends with Cotty Rob or one of these foreign promoters, man, so we can get you some of this foreign money. Go over to Rizin. You can fight 50-year-old men and make $20,000 or something.
Well, honestly, like I would love to. I mean, I'll fight anywhere if they're gonna pay me good. But it's like, some of these, like that, the Cage Warriors, they wanted me to fight again and wanted to rematch Patty. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to get him back, because I knew I was a better fighter. I thought in my head that I had won that fight. And so I wanted to go back and do that. But they weren't even trying to work with me on any kind of things. Like I was asking them to pay for my medicals, because they require MRIs over there. And MRIs are expensive. And so I told them if I wasn't able to get it paid for, then I didn't want to fight, because if I'm only getting paid a couple grand to fight, and guaranteed only a couple grand to fight, and I have to pay $1,000 or $1,500 for an MRI, it's not worth it for me to fight. I'm not going to fight just because I'm tough and I want to fight. I need to make it worth it for myself. And so, like, if they're not going to make it worth it for me, like it doesn't make sense for me. But I do want to fight some of these places, and I will if the price is right. And I'm not I'm not crazy by any means. I'm not like asking for, I want, $100,000 or whatever, but I just want a fair, I want a fair contract for a fair fight. And some of these places aren't willing to do that for me. And so, right now I'm just pushing at some of these other regional scenes that, are less risky for me to fight at, and the money's decent as well. And able to get maybe a couple more wins, and whether and I don't I'm not 100% dead set on the UFC, Bellator, World Series of Fighting, or some of these other places too. I'm totally willing to fight at. I'm willing to fight anywhere that's going to pay me, give me a fair shake. But obviously the UFC is the biggest name, and everybody's drawn to that. And I was already there once, and they know me, and so I think it'll be I kind of have a foot in the door a little bit versus some guys that they don't know or that they haven't seen fight before. So I think I have a foot in the door, like I was saying. Maybe I can get on contenders or just anything really. But it's just all about, it's all about just getting those wins and, stacking up the wins and just making yourself marketable for, some of these bigger organizations.
Now, is there any gimmick infringement lawsuit out on you from the 3-6 Mafia and Juicy J for the nickname? How'd you get that nickname also?
No, it's funny. So my dad used to just call me Juice all the time. So my name is Julian, but he used to call me like Jules all the time. And then he just, he would call me all sorts of things that had J in it. He'd call me J Bird, or he'd call me Juicy or Juice or whatever. When I first fought, the very first day that I fought, which is kind of funny because I actually fought 2 amateur fights in the same day and won both of them. And so it was my very first fight, and they were asking me what my nickname, if I wanted a nickname. And I was like, well, being young at the time, and this was like, you got to think, this is like 10 years ago. So there wasn't a lot of creative nicknames. There were just like violent nicknames. It was like, the axe murderer, or like,
Killer.
There was always like, it was always
Shark.
trying to like, they were always trying to like intimidate them, like their opponent with their nickname. And so I was like, the last thing I want to do is make it super serious. I want to make it, because it was, at the time it was just a hobby for me. I was like, this is my first fight. I want to go out and have fun and just, see what it's all about. And so, and I'd only been training for like 3 or 4 months, and I had no other previous training before that. And I just jumped right into mixed martial arts and then had my first fight. And it's funny because I was fighting a tough kid. He was a kid off the reservation, kind of next where we're from. So he was a tough Indian kid, man. And that kid had like almost 30 fights already, and it was my first amateur fight. And so I was like, but he wasn't one of those kids who trained. All he would do, he's a street fighter basically. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll fight him. And but they were asking for my nickname, and I was like, I wanted to make it something that was, lighthearted and kind of make me or make my family kind of laugh about it. So at least while I'm in the, when you're at a situation where the tension's high, and you're about to fight and it's weird, it's uncomfortable, and you want something that maybe might ease it up a little bit. And I thought, what, I'm gonna just make Juicy J my nickname. And I didn't tell anybody until when I came out, and they said Julian, Juicy J, Erosa. I looked at my family, they started laughing, and it kind of eased the tension in the cage. Didn't get me, way over pumped and get my adrenaline, jump into the roof or whatever. I just, I was able to kind of laugh it off, and I ended up. That was that was my first fight, but it was, I followed my corner 100% and was able to finish the fight within the first round, and then ended up having another fight that same night and finish that kid in the first round. So it was a way for me just to kind of ease my mind, stepping into an uncomfortable situation.
Awesome. Man, what else do I have for you? We've been talking forever. Do you you don't have any wild, crazy stories, any revelations for us? Any secrets you like to tell?
Well, shit, man, wild and crazy stories. I think I got a lot of those, but probably not appropriate for what we're doing right now. But
why is that? Yeah. Everything's appropriate, brother. This is uncensored, uncut, screw BlackNegroJitsu. I'm trying to get on, brother. You got something crazy for me? Something that could give me some more listens? I'm all for it.
Well, honestly, I have I've things I've done, but they're not fight related necessarily.
Oh, but okay.
That's what I'm saying. Right. So like, I don't have necessarily like fighting wise. I don't have anything that's crazy. I mean, people think it's crazy that because at the time when I had my first amateur fight was, they were still trying to like figure out some of the rules for the amateurs, and they were trying to like bring in some more regulations for them. And this was back when, we didn't wear shin pads as amateurs. We wore straight up what they wear as professionals. We were wearing the 4-ounce gloves. Now they make these guys wear shin pads and puffies and stuff. But back then it was like, it was pretty legit. We went hard as amateurs when I was an amateur, and I fought twice that night. And people always think that's crazy. And because to fight twice as an amateur, like in the same night, like that's back when fighting wasn't even popular. Like my coach used to do tournaments and stuff in the same night.
Yeah.
And
tournament that used to be the setup, man.
Yeah, and they would do bare knuckle stuff and all that, and so that was kind of like the raw, uncut version of all the MMA before it started coming into the mainstream and more popular. But the first night that I ever fought, it's just so funny because I always tell people, I'm like, yeah, I fought twice that night, but the circumstances under that situation was, me and my guy showed up and we made weight, and back then there would be guys that would say they were going to fight and they would just not show up. And so you're just dealing with a no-show, and that's when you would get guys that would just hop out of the crowd and fight. And it was pretty raw back then. And even for me, I'm not old by any means, but that was 10 years ago, and or like 9 or 10 years ago. So, but anyways, so one of the guys didn't show up for one of his fights, and they were in the same weight class that me and my guy was fighting. And so what they said is the winner. Me and my guy were like the first or second fight on the card. So they said whoever won that fight, they would offer the next fight to them as well if they wanted to fight a few fights down the card. And if the winner didn't want to take it, they would offer it to the loser. And if the loser didn't want to take it, then the guy was just going to be shit out of luck. And so I was like, you know what? If I come out unscathed and I have energy, I'm down to fight again. I don't care, And what happened was for me, a couple of months before that first fight of mine, I had a fight lined up, and my family bought tickets, and the day of, the guy didn't show for me. So I had, like 10, 15 family members and friends that were there to watch me fight my first fight, and the guy didn't show up, and so I wasn't able to do it. And, I know how that felt for me and my family who bought tickets and who showed up. And so for the other kid whose guy didn't show up, I felt for him. And, I was, and it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to beat this kid's ass too. It was my first and second fight ever. So I was like, you know what? His family's probably here. They traveled. They bought tickets. I was like, I'm not going to leave them hanging, and so I was like, you know what? If I win my first fight, I'll fight him, and I don't even care. Fuck it. And so that's what happened. I fought my first fight, won the first round, and, came out unscathed, and they had no injuries or anything. And they asked me if I wanted to fight. I said, let's do it. And was able to get 2 TKO finishes in the first round. So
you went ahead and knocked him out in front of his friends and family members. It's awesome.
Yeah, but, it's all about, the experience and having fun, and it sucks for him that he got knocked out in front of his friends and family. But you know what? I don't know what might be worse. It just sucks if you prepare yourself for a fight and your friends and family go travel and they pay for tickets, and then and then the fight doesn't happen. That's kind of disappointing as well. So and honestly in my mind, I was like, what? I don't want to leave those people hanging, and I don't want to leave him hanging because he probably put time and effort into this. And so that's why I did it. And obviously, if that guy could, see what was about to happen, he probably wouldn't have even taken the fight. But, we're in the same weight class, and, but, it's funny because it's one of those things that, I tell people now, and they're just like, they're kind of blown away. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think it was that crazy at the time. And my coach wasn't even there. My coach's wife was there, and one of my teammates was cornering me at the time, and my coach's wife texted my coach and was like, hey, Juicy's going to fight twice tonight. And my coach was just like, what the hell? This is his first fight ever. He doesn't even fight 2 times. Like, he was like, what the heck is going on? And but I was able to get both the wins, and, that's kind of outlawed now. You can't do that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool to have that story and be able to tell people like, yeah, my first fight ever, I actually fought twice that night on the same card against 2 different guys.
You can't have tournaments where you had fights on the same night anymore?
No, they don't have. Well, you know what? I think it just depends on what show it is, and if it's what the commissions and stuff are. I know Bellator had done that once pretty recently, but I think it just depends on the show or whatever. But like if you're at an amateur card like that, you can't do that. Like unless it is a tournament, style. I know Bellator had the tournament style, and I think Phil, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but he ended up winning it. But yeah, he fought multiple times that night. But that was part of the, that was part of the show, but as an amateur, like and some of these guys are like, I'll talk to some amateurs now and they're just like, the way they get, their anxiety's through the roof and they're all like nervous and stuff before they're like first or second or third fight. And I'll tell them that, they're like, holy crap, how'd you fight twice? And, it's crazy because like the first, like my first amateur fights that I did, like I had no nerves going into it. It was such a weird experience because you think being at my first and second and like some of my first fights that, my nerves would be through the roof, but they weren't. And so I was able to, capitalize on that. But yeah, it's funny to tell people that story sometimes.
You said you moved from were you living in Las Vegas for a while?
No, I've actually me and my wife moved out here about 3.5 months ago.
From where?
From Yakima.
Oh, okay. All right. I was just wondering. Well, that does it for today. I need you to stay on the line, though. I need to get your quick picks. But, Julian, thank you for your contribution to the school of BlackNegroJitsu. It was wonderful to have you here today. Any shout-outs, sponsors you got, go ahead and do that now. And then stay on the line. I got to get your picks for the card.
Yeah, no worries, man. I just want to shout out to all my friends and family and everybody who supports me, all the sponsors that have supported me, from, some of my first professional fights all the way up to now, and just all my teammates and coaches. Thank you.
Awesome, Julian. Thank you so much.
No problem.